there's not a whole lot of dudes that are taking accountability. You know, I fucked up bad, like crash and burn type shit, hurt a lot of people. And I'm fully aware of that, and I'm gonna owe for the rest of my life. And I had no spiritual life. I had I was bankrupt spiritually. I thought my whole spirituality was this craft. Because other than smoking weed and drinking, the only spiritual experience I ever felt was on set. You know, that's the only time my perspective would shift and change, and it's the only time I ever felt useful. And so I'm on a spiritual growth path. I'm on an excavation. I'm picking it up, cleaning it up, putting it back. You know, I didn't just hurt that woman. The kind of shame my wife has to walk around with, you know, the pain that came to the people I was working with creatively even. I built this, like, me and Bo built like something really special downtown, and all them kids, you know, I just failed a lot of people. And so when I say I'm gonna owe, it's not just her, I owe a lot of people. And so the reason I wanted to do this, and the reason why I felt like celestial mathematics when you hit me up was, it's not a lot of places I can go talk, period, you know? And I guess old me would have looked at this like, oh, well, this is an opportunity for you to like speak your piece. But really the only thing I want to do is like give dudes who fuck up hope.
Absolutely.
I'm not gonna pretend like I done figured it all out. It's such a mystery. Yeah, I mean, I got amends to make. I got a long list of people that I need to make amends to. And so what I want to say to those people is I get it. You know, it doesn't seem, you know, when it first hit, it was like, you know, I wanted to air it out and talk about specifics, and like, none of it really matters, you know. I hurt that woman, you know, and in the process of doing that, I hurt many other people, and many other people before that woman. You know, I was living my life, I was a pleasure-seeking, selfish, self-centered, dishonest, inconsiderate, fearful human being, and I was operating on a survival instinct. I wasn't operating as a friend. I didn't actually, all my loves and friendships were transactional. I didn't actually understand what love was. You know, I didn't know what friendship was. I'm not trying to do a pity party thing. I was raised very specifically in my father would tell me stuff like, you know, your life is your life, son. You know, if you want to have a good life, you got to work real hard. You got to get into a good school. You got to get a good job. That'll lead to a good relationship. You have a kid, you put that kid in a good school, and, you know, it's all up to you. And so that kind of, it forced me into a position in my life where I was God. When a woman would like me, it felt like so fucking foreign that I didn't want to fuck it up.
Or if somebody was trying to tell you weren't in a place to receive it anyways. I mean, maybe somebody tried.
Yeah, I wasn't.
You know? And I get, look, you said, whether it was through, you know, drinking or whatever the fuck it was, that you hurt people that are close to you.
Yeah.
That really resonated with me. Is there an example that you can think of that you're, I don't know if the right word is proud, but if you feel good about sort of where you guys got to, or you feel good about the process in terms of making amends, and there's growth.
Yeah.
Can you give me an example of that?
Yeah. See, I didn't even know what amends meant, just like I didn't know what prayer was. But and let me find my way to what you just said.
Okay.
But like part of what happened to me up there was I would get quiet and I start hearing like loving thoughts for people that on paper were like villainous characters in my life. So I would get quiet. I was, you know, the first 20 thoughts is like, you got to do this, you got to do that, go here, go there, go get this, got da. And then there'd be like the 30th thought that's like, hit your dad up, tell him you love him. Now, me and my dad weren't talking, you know, and this is how my prayer life works now. It's like I get quiet, I hear loving thoughts, and then when I act on these loving thoughts, miraculous shit happens in my life. You know, I wind up in service, or and then I feel peace, but also like I get all these like incredible, like with my dad, I want to hit my dad up. Now here's a man who I done vilified on a grand scale. I put all this shit in the street, you know, and used him, juiced my dad as like, this is the reason I'm fucking foul out here. You know, I'm come from this wayward upbringing, and, you know, my dad is the reason I'm such a fuck up. You know, he's a biker and a wild man and a criminal and a da-da-da and abusive and blah, and I wrote this narrative, which was just fucking nonsense. My dad was so loving to me my whole life. Fractured, sure. Crooked, sure. Like wonky for sure. But never was not loving. Never was not there. He was always there. He was always there. And I done a world press tour about how fucked he was as a man. Honey Boy is basically like a big woe is me story about how fucked my father is. And I wronged him. And I remember getting on the phone with him and him being like, you know, I never read this stuff in the script you sent, you know, because I didn't put that shit in there, you know. And I was bullshitting him. I was, you know, just trying to get him to sign this fucking piece of paper. He thought I was gonna tell the story like Braveheart, you know. I was gonna, and I didn't, you know. I told the story like this dude who, and I turned the knob up on certain shit that wasn't real. My dad never hit me. Never. He spanked me once, one time. And the story that gets painted in Honey Boy is like this dude was like abusing his kid all the time. You know, my dad tried to keep me from smoking cigarettes. That's when he spanked me. He found me smoking cigarettes in the shower, he pulled me out, he spanked me. That's when he spanked me. But that wasn't my narrative, because it didn't position me as like this wounded, fractured child that you could root for, which is what I was using him for. And so when I got on the phone with him, I took accountability for all that and knew very clearly that I couldn't take it back. You know, my dad was gonna live with this certain narrative about him on a public scale for a very long time, you know, probably the rest of his life. And I done put all the shit in the street, you know. The shit that my dad got arrested for happened like 30 years ago, and I done brought it all back to the surface, you know. And I told him, you know, what I was doing, and it went just like, you know, hey man, I'm in this program, I'm learning to be a decent man one day at a time. I know I done fucked you over here, you know, I done put your shit in the street, and I know I made it harder for you to move around in the world, and I defined you as like this villainous character when really you were like an amazing dude for me in my life, and like, you know, I really look up to you and the way that you've moved through your failings and the father that you've been to me. You've been a great man to me, and if there's ever anything I can do, be it blood, counsel, money, whatever, if there's ever anything I can do to make your life better in any way, please don't hesitate to let me know. And my dad was living in Costa Rica on his fucking cocaine farm at the time, you know, and living with a bunch of Nicaraguans, and like, he said, I want to come home. And so I got him back, and my dad was like me, I was a big pothead. And so here I am with like, I got like 10 months of sobriety. I'm about to go pick my dad up. I'm in a weed shop buying like $500 worth of weed for my dad, and sober. And I get it in the bag, and I show up at the airport, and my dad gets out, and I see my dad in a wheelchair. He's got COPD, dude could barely breathe. And I wheel his ass over to the truck, and I put him in the truck, and I give him a joint. He sparks up, and he's coughing like he's got blood and mucus coming out. He looks like totally broken, you know. And little by little, I start bringing him back to health. You know, he's got eye problems. We fix the eye problems. He found out he's pre-diabetic. He hadn't been to a doctor in like 10 years. You know, when we get to the doctor's like, if you smoke anything, you're gonna die. You got like 10% lung capacity. If you smoke anything, or even around incense, you might die. And my dad in the doctor's office looks at me and goes, I think I want to get sober. In the doctor's office, he looks at me and goes, I think I want to get sober. So I bring him into my fold. I bring him into the group. He starts going all the shit with me. We get on it together. That's probably like the crowning achievement of any amends that I made. My dad's got 5.5 months now, you know, and he's working with other dudes, and like, you carry the message that way. People don't question whether I was a fuck up. My shit was neon. So like, my message when I'm talking to a dude who's in a similar situation, I don't have to do all this qualifying.
Right.
Yo, I don't gotta like walk you through all the bang bang. Right. You know what I mean? Like, you know what it was. Right. It creates an avenue to be effective in somebody's life. You know, the reason Bo is effective down there is because nobody questions him, right? It's like, his shit was neon. Dude was the key holder of the Pueblos for a long period of time. So when he's moving around, youngsters don't like need him to like, I mean, I remember being in like, I was getting ready to get in, and I had no business in the middle of it, but it was quite a contentious thing running that theater program down there. And there's a whole lot of like race relations you had to deal with down there, you know? And a whole lot of like art kids from like Studio City would drive down to the hood, and like, after a while, like, the neighborhood was like, man, fuck all this shit. Like, I don't want you down here, you know, unless these opportunities for people from this zip code, then get out of here. Yeah. And that became quite contentious. And I remember like watching Bo go and talk down every single one of these neighbors. And it was short conversations. And it wasn't rah-rah. It was like they knew right away they were talking to tribe. This is what I mean by like, I'm in the tribe of the fuck-ups. And I'm like a very public, sinner, very fallible person in the public sphere. And so what I think now my purpose is to not do this like the other examples that we've had of how to navigate something like this, which is to go after the woman or try to like win a court case or like get back into a fucking movie or like get back on at all. You know, my purpose, and I mean this with every fiber of my being, is to be instructive with my life so that I can be an advertisement, like a billboard for a principled way of living, and that this shit on the other side of being where I was is still fucking sexy. It's still glittery, it's still fun. I found my smile on the other side of this shit. I learned how to laugh on the other side of this shit, like genuinely. I found a group of friends around me. You know, I found purpose in my life.
This little girl, man.
I mean, that's like that's even that, as big as that is, that's almost an infinitesimal part of how, and feels almost like some cheesy pre-written version of what's available to a person when they start living towards this purpose. It's complete alignment. I'll tell you like this, I remember being in Georgia when I was doing this movie with this kid, Zach. You were there for part of it. Yeah. And I remember getting arrested. Yeah. And I remember getting out of jail the next day, and I remember sitting down with Zach, and there were moments of like lucid articulation from this man. And this happened to be one of them, and he said, you know, this is my one shot. You make movies all the time, but this is my one shot, and you're ruining it for me. And to say that you don't feel that when it lands is not true. I felt it deeply, but it's what you do with that feeling. You know, do you change? And I didn't. You know, I would always I always had an inch left. I always had some fucking wiggle room. Every time I would fuck up, there was always some wiggle. There was always a Brad Pitt on the phone. There was always some like, you know, Sundance Award.
Some next project.
There was always Alma. There was always wiggle room to get back into ego. And this time, there wasn't no wiggle room. That's why I attribute this woman with saving my life, because she destroyed any route towards that wiggle.
That's real.
It is real.
Rock fucking bottom.
Rock bottom. Bottom isn't when you experience the worst moment of your life.
Definitely.
Bottom is when you change.
It's when you actually, when you touch it, when you smell it, when it's right in your face.
Yeah,
you feel it.
and
it's not about severity of what the thing is.
It's about what you do with it once it happens. So like, once it happened, I mean, when it landed, I forgot how to breathe. You know, because the subtext of the email was, your hustle's over, you know? And I forgot how to breathe. And the next thing I did after 2 minutes of sitting there, staring at a computer screen, was I went and loaded up a gun and sat at my table and was gonna kill myself. I was out of here. I didn't know what to do anymore. Like, all my ideas had failed. And I sat there for 2 minutes thinking, where is the wiggle room? I'd already used
What's my play?
Yeah, what's the play? And there were no options. It was like, there was nowhere to go. It's not like I could go outside and get a Choco Taco and chill on the, you know, people driving down the street, rolling down the window like, fuck off and die, you know? This is where I was in the early days of this shit. So I didn't even want to leave my house. And I had a woman living in my house who wasn't my wife. And I was on my way to go do some movie I didn't give a fuck about, you know, just like momentum building kind of shit, you know? Movies, no intrinsic value, just like, I need something on the cards, you know, for this year. I need my 2 or 3 projects, one of these things. And I felt disconnected from all of it. And I wound up getting emails from certain dudes who, like you, were still involved in my life, even when it got ugly, you know, when it got chunky. One of those dudes was Sean Penn. Sean's like, you need to call Brolin. And I called Brolin, and he told me he was going to this meeting online. Now, the gun is loaded. Like, I haven't left my sitting position, you know? And I wound up signing on to this meeting, and I heard one of the dudes who was speaking that night say, if you're new and you just entered, you know, you don't have everything you want right now, but you got everything you need right now. Now. And he did that for like 2 minutes. And the first minute I'm thinking, you can't spend the whole rest of your share just snapping your fingers and saying now. Like, this shit is ludicrous. And I went into this judgment, which is what my alcoholism sounds like. It sounds like criticality. It sounds like judgment. So I'm in my judgment, like, you better say, and the gun is right here. I'm like, you better say something that's really gonna get me the fuck out of where I'm at. And after 2 minutes, like, I felt like a giggle start to rise inside of me, and I felt something like presence. I stopped thinking about the email, stopped thinking about my hustle. The gun almost disappeared, and it was like I'm sitting here on this Skype call, and I'm present for the first time in my life. And I want to write in the dude in the chat box, like, hey, bro, you know, I'm on the verge, you know, I'm about to kill myself. He's like, oh, okay, cool, call me tomorrow. Just like throwaway, you know, and I needed that. I had been enabled for so long in my life that if it was gonna be me walking into this program and having a bunch of dudes pat me on the back like, hey man, welcome home. We're glad you're here. I'd have been out again, because then it would have been more wiggle room. But the guy that I wound up running into was not having it. And he said, hey man, meet me on the beach tomorrow. And I wound up here at Tower 10, and he said, I need you to get on your knees. And I'm like, I'm not getting on my knees. He's like, cool, deuces. He started walking away. I'm thinking, oh fuck, but it also reified this, like, you don't care. Like, you care, but not in that way. You know, you're not gonna pat me on my back. And I said, okay. I was so willing at this point because I was in so much fucking pain. And he said, get on your knees. And I get on my knees, he gets on his knees with me. So right away, it's no longer like this power play. We're like collaborating in this. And he says, I need you to stop the waves. And I'm like, man, listen, this Dr. Quinn medicine woman version of this shit ain't gonna work with me. You know, like, I get how this goes. He's like, you're either gonna write what happens, or you're gonna do a bunch of shit that you don't believe in so that your life changes. Because your issue is that you need to rationalize everything. And you're out of options, son. Like, what? If not this, what? And he was right. And so I started saying, you know, stop waves, and he's like, louder, man. Stop waves, and he got up off of his knees and he started walking away. And I looked back and he's like, nah, keep going. And he's like, keep saying it again. I say, stop waves. He's like, louder, bro. They're all the way over there. You're all the way over here. Stop them waves, man. And now I'm yelling, and I'm having like an emotional, it almost feels performative now. Now I'm like back in my bag. Back to like the manipulating, hustling, like wiggle room finding. Yeah, watch this. Boom. Let me, and then I'm crying and I'm, stop waves. You know, like I'm in the middle of like the greatest monologue of my life on this beach, you know? Yeah, exactly. And he puts his hand on my shoulder and he goes, you can stop all that, which made me like giggle, you know? I started giggling, and then he stood up and he put his hand on my left shoulder and put his hand on my right shoulder, and he said, welcome to AA. And it did something to me that felt like warrior shit. You know, it felt like man code, like G shit. It didn't feel like fluffy, cute shit, book reading, sitting in it felt like
you're on a mission.
Yeah, it felt purposeful. And it felt sexy, to be honest with you. Sexy in the way that listening to Kevin Vance feels sexy to a young man who feels like a boy. It felt so rooted. And it wasn't emotional, it wasn't performative, he wasn't trying to manipulate me, but it was kind of hokey, and like the knights in shining armor kind of hokiness that like made me feel like a little kid again. And he said, I need you to go home and clear out, like clear the decks. And I'm like, nah, man, like for me, and I don't know if you felt this way, but every woman was the one for me. There was never a two. If you liked me, you were the one. And that had to do with my insecurity and my fear. Like I didn't have there was no 2 or 3, or I was just dating like frivolously. It was always like this grand hair climbing up the super emotional, super romantic, this fierce romance, you know, that I was searching for, desperate little boy shit. And he said, you gotta clear the decks. And I'm like, I don't know if I can do that, man. You know, I feel like she's the one. And he's like giggling to himself, you know? This isn't my wife. My wife is not involved in my life at this point. And I got this one who's not the one who accused me of this shit, and she's just another person who's been trapped in my sphere of influence. And she's living in my house, and he's like, well, look, man, I tell you what, you know, you can keep doing it your way, or you can try some new shit, because the way that you're living, you're fucked. You're fully fucked. You're doomed, is what he said. You're doomed. That was the word. And I flipped to this page. He made me flip to this doctor's opinion we got in our book. And in the doctor's opinion, or how our book starts, it mentions the word doomed. And he's like, this isn't like another AA guy. This is a doctor telling you you're doomed if you don't figure this shit out. And he goes, to put it in perspective, if you went to Kaiser Permanente right now, and they had sat you down and put your, you know, x-rayed you and put your x-ray up on a light board, and you looking at a picture of your clavicle, and the doctor said, hey man, you see that gray spot just above your chest cavity? You're doomed. what would happen to you is your asshole would suck, you would fucking start sweating bullets, and you wouldn't be thinking about the job that you got to get to, or the girl you got to hold on to, or where you're going to go for Father's Day, or you immediately, your whole life would get very small, and the only rational response to that kind of information is, well, what do I do? And if I told you to staple a dog's dick to your fucking chin and walk up and down the street picking a cigarette buzz, you would do it. You wouldn't ask me why or whether you believe in it or nothing. You go look for a dog, you know? And so that made sense to me. He puts me in a car. He says, I need you to listen to this Sandy Beach tape. Now, at this point in my life, like I'm like barely hanging on. And I'm using this woman like drugs, you know? Every time I need validation, I'm with this woman, and she becomes with the job, the mask of success that the job created for me, which kept me from like really looking at myself. She became that for me in the interim. And he's like, you got to get rid of all of it, you know? There is no more work and no more romance for a year. You're going to have to give me a year. And I'm thinking like, I'm not going to be able to pull that off, you know? And right away, I'm half measuring, and this is my wiggle room. I can't. And he said, I need you to download this tape, this Sandy Beach tape. Sandy Beach is a big speaker. And in this...
What was the speech?
Yeah, the speech was, he was talking about this Chinese farmer. And this Chinese farmer and his son, they're picking radishes about the ground. And they don't own the land that they're farming off of. And they're barely subsisting. They're giving 70% to the landowner. They're living off of 30% of these radishes. Their whole financial legacy is tied up into this workhorse. And one day, and the son is really working the land because the man is too old. And one day the workhorse runs up off the hill. He just fucks off. He's up the hill. And the son runs into the house and he shakes his dad up and he says, Dad, you're not gonna believe this is a travesty. We're gonna die out here. I can't get these radishes to grow unless I turn this land over, and I can't move that hoe without the horse, and the horse is gone. This is a nightmare. And the old man, nonplussed, looks at his son. He goes, I don't know what this is, son. I don't know if it is a nightmare. I can't call it. And the son thinks his dad's out to lunch, or like ambivalent, or something's wrong, or he's too old. And a couple days later, the kid is chilling on the porch and he sees the horse running down the hill with 50 wild stallions behind him. And they run into the paddock, and he locks the paddock, and he runs inside, and he hits the dad. He's like, man, this is, fuck radishes. Like, we're rich, you know, we're in the horse business. We're in the horse trading business now. This is a miracle, Dad. I'm gonna go tell everybody we're trading horses now. And the father looks at his son, nonplussed again, and says, I don't know what this is. I don't know if it's a miracle. I can't call it. And a couple more days pass, and the son's trying to break these horses down, domesticate these horses. He doesn't know anything about horses. He's a radish farmer. So, one of the horses ain't having it. He rears up, kicks him in his leg. It's like 1400s China. There's no Kaiser Permanente. His shit is shattered. They wrap him in some like tobacco leaves and sprinkle some mint on it, go sit in a chair for a while. And he's wailing, and the townspeople hear about it. And the townspeople run up on the little shack and, oh man, what are you gonna do? You know, you can't domesticate these horses. You can't move this hoe. You guys are fully fucked. I don't know what you're gonna do, but this is pretty much the end, right? Like, this is a nightmare. And the old man says, I don't know what this is. He looks at his son's leg. He goes, I don't know what this is. I can't really call it. A couple more days pass. He's sitting with his son. He's trying to calm him down. He's in the middle of pain. And they hear this thunderous noise, and they look up on the ridge line, and they see 5,000 samurai on horseback running towards their little hut. And the commanding officer gets off his horse and says, give us your son. We're going to fight the Maoist army. And he looks at his son's leg, and he looks back at the samurai army, and he goes, I would, but he can't get out the chair. You know, he can't get on his, he can't. No, I can't. I would, but I can't. He's crippled. And the man gets back on his horse, and 8,000 men ride off to their death. And I listen to this tape, and I'm driving back from the beach back to where I'm living, and I get out of my car, and her bags are packed. She's on her way out. And old me would have written a haiku poem in blood and ripped my shirt off Hulk Hogan style, ran down the street and jumped over the fence, and that guy, climbed the hair up the thing. Boombox in the air guy. That's what I came up on. And something in me, from having heard what I just heard, what feels like this is now I can't get no lower. I hear this like I can't call it. And it becomes like this, the most diplomatic breakup I ever had in my life. And I say, what can I do? And can I get you a car? And she goes, no, don't worry about it. Go get well. And I go walk into my house and I call my dude up and I'm like, man, I think this shit is working. Like, man, this is a miracle. Like, this is the most diplomatic thing I ever, and I'm in my meeting, I'm telling all the dudes, like, I think this program's really working in my life, man. And then I got 5 days sober, and they're like, bro, I think you're pink clouding. Why don't you go to another fucking meeting, Jack? And I go on to this other meeting. Now, the whole time I've been doing this for the first 5 days, I'm on the phone with a lawyer. Like, look, this is true, but this isn't true. And I got receipts for this, and I'm not gonna do this, and and I'm fighting tooth and nail. I'm on the phone with the agents, and the manager's like, listen, you gotta believe me, and blah, 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 and doing that shit, right? And my sponsor's telling me the whole time, he's like, look, you're gonna have to let go, dog. Like, the wind's at your back. Just let go, you know? All this, like, fighting, fuck around, like, let go, man, that's childish. And I'm hearing him, but I'm not doing it. You know, I'm on the phone with him, and I'm hanging up the phone, and I'm fighting this thing, and I got a lawyer who's like, you need to go to rehab for anger management. Because when you go to court, no AA is gonna mean shit, you know? Addicts had already juiced that route for so long that it don't mean nothing. We need clinical receipts that you're doing something, right? And I'm like, I'm not going to rehab. I've always really like cultivated my brown bagger, right? Like, I don't like wearing new shoes. So this idea that I was gonna pay all this money to go pet a horse and make a friendship bracelet, it felt like, man, this shit's like, that's not sexy. You know, I found AA for real. I'm really in my shit now. I don't wanna go to this rehab.
Especially you don't want to go to it because somebody's saying that's gonna get you off. It's all about the intentionality. You gotta not stop. It's not about not saying the right thing because you're worried about getting in trouble. You say the right thing because you believe the fucking right thing.
It's that, and it's also, I'd already done this.
Right.
I'd already gone to rehab, wrote a script, and played that game. Right. You know, and to focus.
And it didn't work. Man.
It didn't work.
It didn't work.
To focus on like my childhood trauma isn't where my problem lies. My problem doesn't lie in what people did to me.
What led you to a place with more wiggle room, and now you don't have it?
And I'm telling him, nah, I don't want to do this, you know, and I'm telling the lawyer, like, I don't want to do this, and look, yeah, this and this, and I'm fighting all this shit, and I sign on to this AA meeting. This is where I'm talking about, like, miraculous shit started to pop off in my life. And my dude sent me there because his mom was taking a chip for like 37 years. And the woman who took a chip right after his mother was the woman I lost my virginity to, who when I was 19 years old, I held a knife to her neck. And everything in that moment, it felt like I heard God's voice say, I'm everywhere. You can't run no more. And like my whole fucking, all my planning and like all this like, just went gone. And that really happened, you know? And I remember it vividly. And I wrote her in the chat box like, did my dude tell you to come? Like, do you know this guy and this guy? She's like, nah, I'm in here because my people are getting chips, you know? But it's good to see you. I knew you were on your way here. You know, I hope you get it this time. And so I called my dude up and he's like, bro, you gotta let go. You gotta let go in full. And I wanna get in my car and drive up to Utah. And I'm in Utah for 3 months. And while I'm in Utah, they take my cell phone from me. And if they didn't take my cell phone from me, I was never gonna be able to deal with what I needed to deal with. I had never known how to pray because I could never cultivate silence. I had no absence in my life. Every unforgiving minute was full of some fucking scroll or some more like ego feed, constant, non-stop rotation of this ego thing and that ego thing and just constant fulfillment of like my own personal desires, and they took my phone from me. And just for that reason alone, I would urge anybody to go this route if you're in a situation like mine, just to get the fucking phone out of your pocket. And what that gave me was time to like really assess what had been my operating systems. What had been like the motivational force in my life, which was always me. It was always ego. It was always
even the smallest decision to even go into
everything.
Food, everything you eat,
everything was ego. Everything was ego. I would eat that not because it tasted good, but because it would do this or do that, you know. And so I was there for 90 days, and in that 90 days, I made a list of all these people that I had hurt, and I mean a bunch of shit happened, but I came out and just hit the ground running, trying to make amends, trying to right these wrongs. This is also still a part of that. There's some people who don't want to talk to me, you know? Yeah. And I understand that. And so my purpose now is to be patient.
Stoicism.